Okay, so glass mousepads are starting to get really popular lately. This perfectly consistent ultra smooth surface is insane, plus the unfiltered input you can get is huge. You couldn't even get the same experience from the fastest cloth pads on the market right now. Is it really worth switching?
Well, yes and no. I think it's fair to look at the two major downsides of glass mouse pads up front and then talk about all of the upsides, rather than all of the upsides and end on a downer. So let's first talk about cost, because boy, these glass mouse pads cost a lot more than cloth mouse pads. Depending on the cloth mouse pad that you get, of course, because there's very high-end cloth mouse pads you can order in from, I don't know, Japan, like artisan mouse pads like both Danny and I have today. But the cost of glass mouse pads is generally going to cost around $80 up to $120 or $130, and that's typically where most of them sit. I think that gives a slightly higher barrier to entry when it comes to glass mouse pads, because that price is just gonna keep a lot of people out of wanting to spend $100 on something you literally drag your mouse over every single day and possibly damage and spill and you name it, whatever happens to your mouse pad in the future. A second immediate problem I had when I first got my glass mouse pad was storage and traveling with it. See, glass mouse pads, well, they're glass, so they don't really fold, they don't really roll up, they don't do anything like that. And when it comes time to store it because you want to use a different mouse pad, or if you want to put it in a backpack to travel to, I don't know, another state or even another country or another city, the issue is you need to put that thing flat where it is in its shape. It doesn't move, it doesn't fold, it doesn't bend, and if it's bending, then you have a real problem because it might break. But from this negative point of view, I want to immediately transfer into one of the best things about glass mouse pads. They are so easy to clean. I mean, literally a microfiber cloth and it is perfectly clean. You don't need to soak it in water, you don't need to wash it, you don't need to scrub it with a toothbrush or something like that like you would need to do with a cloth mouse pad. But I will say every little piece of dust on the glass mouse pad you feel. So if there's like a singular hair from your cat or a single speck of dust, you're gonna feel it as you mouse over it and you're using your mouse. Now, of course, this can be solved by just wiping off your mouse pad or just blowing it off real quick, but overall, it is so much easier to keep clean.
Also, depending on where your forearm sits on your glass pad, there could be a little bit of stickiness due to the skin to glass contact, and this could be really inconvenient or just uncomfortable for a lot of users. Some companies such as Pulsar are selling compression sleeves that kind of cover different areas on your hand and forearm to reduce the skin to pad contact. But keep in mind, this could be $15 to $20 on top of the amount that you already paid for a glass mouse pad.
Okay, so in the world of mouse pads, you're often going to hear people talk about two types of mouse pads: fast pads and control pads. If you're anything like I was when I started looking into mouse pads, you have no idea what I'm talking about right now. So control pads are your typical cloth pads that have quite a bit of friction and allow stopping power through that friction, texture, and softness. And even within the world of cloth pads, you're gonna have different softness levels. For example, harder pads give less friction and faster movements, whereas softer pads give you more friction, allowing you to stop faster. A fast pad is pretty much the complete opposite. You're gonna sacrifice that stopping power because the fast pads have a lot less friction. This does, however, allow you to move the mouse as if you weren't even playing on a surface at all, like as if it was just your arm in a vacuum, being able to accelerate and move your mouse around at super speed. A quick side note that makes this even more complex is that stopping power is influenced by your mouse's weight. So even if you're using a fast pad or even a glass pad, but you have a super heavy mouse, it's gonna counteract the benefits of a fast pad.
So we already know that these pads can get insanely fast. Think of it like driving a sports car on the racetrack. The faster you go, the harder it is to control, especially when you're hitting those tight corners. So I think if you're into those fast-paced shooters like Apex Legends or Overwatch, this is where a glass pad really shines. The low friction lets you whip your mouse around with basically zero effort, which can be a huge advantage into those quick reaction scenarios. But I think here's the downside. I think if you're playing something like CSGO or Valorant, the same speed could work against you. Let's say you're holding an angle and waiting for someone to peek. When you flick to take the shot, you might over flick because the pad is just too fast. Because in a cloth pad, you do have that stopping power, while as in glass, you don't. So I think it really comes down to the kind of games you play and whether you can handle that speed.
This, of course, can be combated with more aim training and getting good, so it's not impossible to use a glass pad for slow control games and a control pad for fast games, but why limit yourself using the wrong tool if you just want the best tool for the job? Like, why buy a truck when you want a Miata, or get a Miata when you need to tow something with a truck, you know what I mean? But once again, it's not impossible, and a lot of this is down to personal preference.
When it comes to mouse pads, consistency is everything. Cloth pads tend to wear down and lose that fresh out the box feel after a while. They get dirty way too easily, and the environmental factors like humidity or wear can completely change how they feel over time. That's why people tend to get a new one once their old one is worn down. So naturally, glass pads seem to be the next obvious upgrade. They're sleek, they're durable, and they offer an insanely smooth glide. On paper, they're superior in every way, but after using one, the downsides hit me hard. See, the moment I put my glass pad down, I got hit with that excitement of the potential aim that I could get. But as soon as I hopped into a game, reality set in. For games like CS or Valorant, stopping power is essential. You need that slight resistance to lock onto your target, and with the glass pad, it just isn't there. Don't get me wrong, glass pads are amazing in their own right, but for competitive FPS where control and accuracy take priority, they might not fit the best. But don't let the types of game you play decide on what pad you should get.
As an example, I used a glass pad a lot for CS over the course of like 4 months, and I really enjoyed it. However, I did have some difficulties playing CS because I feel like I could have done better in certain situations if I had a control cloth pad instead of a fast pad. I mean, the amount of times I just flicked way past the dude I was trying to flick to and then lost a battle and my entire team was just fully disappointed in me is I don't want to talk about it, you know? But I will say, after like 1 to 2 months of using the glass pad, I was able to really get used to it, and I became a monster on it. I mean, zooming around with no friction whatsoever just makes you feel ultimate freedom. But going back to a cloth pad after using a glass pad for 4 months, oh, I see the pros and cons of both, and it's just so hard to pick. I mean, why not just have both?